Schopenhauer and the world as will. Arthur Schopenhauer's philosophical system, often viewed through the lens of pessimism, offers a radical and profoundly insightful challenge to traditional Western thought. His central concept, the world as will, is not merely an abstract metaphysical idea, but a visceral description of the fundamental reality underlying all existence. To truly grasp Schopenhauer, we must look beyond the gloomy reputation and delve into the sheer, uncompromising energy of the will itself. Most philosophies attempt to find rationality, purpose, or a benevolent intelligence at the core of the universe. Schopenhauer, influenced heavily by Immanuel Kant's distinction between the phenomenal world, the world as it appears to us, structured by our senses and understanding, and the noumenal world, the thing in itself, reality independent of our perception, took a momentous, unorthodox step. He declared that the Kantian thing in itself is not an unknowable void, but something we can know through a uniquely immediate experience, our own bodies and the inner life of striving, desiring, and willing. The will, blind, aimless, and insatiable. For Schopenhauer, the will is not the mere rational volition of an individual deciding to have a cup of coffee. It is a singular, metaphysical striving force, a cosmic, blind, and irrational urge that is the hidden essence of all phenomena. It manifests at every level of the cosmos. Inanimate nature. It's the force driving gravity, magnetism, chemical affinity, and the unyielding pressure of rocks. Vegetative life. It's the inherent urge of a seed to sprout, a root to penetrate the soil, and a flower to turn toward the sun. Animal life. It's the primal instinct for survival, reproduction, and the ceaseless struggle for resources. Humanity. Here, the will becomes conscious, manifesting as the whole spectrum of human desires, needs, emotions, and intellectual striving. However, even our intellect, representation, is merely a tool, a candle held by the blind giant, the will, to navigate the phenomenal world and ensure its survival and perpetuation. This will is fundamentally aimless. It has no ultimate goal, no divine blueprint, and no final satisfaction. Its only law is to will more. It is an eternal hunger, an endless cycle of needing, striving, temporarily satisfying, and then needing anew. This is where Schopenhauer's famed pessimism arises. Since the will is the essence of reality, the human condition is therefore defined by suffering. Satisfaction is fleeting, merely the brief cessation of a specific need, which instantly gives way to boredom if a new need doesn't immediately arise. Life, he famously wrote, oscillates like a pendulum between pain and boredom. The illusion of individuality and the world as representation. The world we perceive, the world of individual objects, space, time, and causality, is what Schopenhauer calls the world as representation, Vorstellung. This is the surface, the Maya, a concept he borrowed from Hindu philosophy, that veils the underlying undifferentiated will. Our intellect, bound by the principle of sufficient reason, which dictates that everything must have a cause and a connection, carves the singular will into billions of seemingly separate, competing individuals. We experience ourselves as a self distinct from others, leading to the egoism, conflict, and ethical failings that characterize the human drama. This perceived separateness is the root of most suffering, the realization that we are fundamentally disconnected from the universal essence. Avenues of escape: art and asceticism. Given this bleak diagnosis of a world driven by an insatiable blind force, is there any way out? Schopenhauer proposes two major temporary palliations and one ultimate radical escape. 1. Aesthetic contemplation, temporary relief. The most accessible respite from the tyranny of the will is found in the contemplation of art, particularly music. When we engage with art, we momentarily step out of the will's service. We stop viewing objects through the lens of utility, desire, or threat, and instead perceive them as Platonic ideas, eternal, universal forms abstracted from time and space. In observing a beautiful landscape or a sculpture, the observer becomes a will-less subject of knowing, a pure mirror of the object. The I that wants, strives, and suffers dissolves. Music, however, holds a unique and supreme position. It is not merely a representation of the will's ideas, like painting or poetry, but a direct copy of the will itself. It speaks a universal language that bypasses the intellect entirely, allowing us to feel the deepest stirrings of the cosmic will without being subject to its painful demands for action. 2. The path of asceticism, radical relief. While art offers temporary relief, the true radical escape lies in the complete denial of the will to live. Nicht voluntas. This is the path of the ascetic, echoing the principles found in Buddhism, which Schopenhauer greatly admired. This denial involves recognition of the illusion, truly grasping that one's own striving individual will is identical to the suffering will in all things. Cessation of desire, consciously refusing to feed the will through sensual pleasure, self-assertion, or the pursuit of temporal goals. Ultimate pity, justice. When the individual will is quieted, the illusory veil of Maya lifts. We recognize the suffering of others as our suffering, manifesting in a universal pity or compassion, Mitleid, that becomes the basis of true morality. The culmination of this path is a state of nirvana, a profound stillness, a transition into a nothingness, which is not non-existence, but the cessation of the painful, striving, individual phenomenal existence. It is the final silencing of the engine of the world as will, a quietude reached through deliberate self-denial and ethical compassion. Schopenhauer's legacy, beyond the gloom. Schopenhauer's philosophy is far more than an intellectual exercise. It is an existential confrontation with the chaotic, pulsating energy of life itself. His ideas profoundly influenced artists, composers, and philosophers who wrestled with modernity, including Richard Wagner, Friedrich Nietzsche, before he vehemently rejected him, Leo Tolstoy, and the development of psychoanalysis through his anticipation of the unconscious, irrational drive that Sigmund Freud would later call the id. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that beneath the veneer of logic and civilization, we are driven by an elemental hungry force. Accepting this, however, paradoxically opens the door to a deeper form of peace, not the cheap peace of fulfilled desire, but the profound quietude of a will that has chosen to look itself in the eye and, ultimately, decline the invitation to strive. If Schopenhauer's relentless analysis of the human condition and the cosmic drive has piqued your curiosity, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button if this journey into the will's domain gave you a new perspective on life's struggles. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the minds that shaped the world. Your engagement fuels the contemplation.